How's everybody? I don't ever shy away from passion. I never apologize for it either. I'm that 30-year veteran owner who has decided to take the next step in my life and go through and start mentoring, coaching, and giving back. And it's so freaking cool to listen to everything that's happened this week and be able to put all back into a final 1-hour presentation. I'm pretty amazed that I put this presentation together and I haven't changed it throughout the time we've been here, because you guys are spot on. I'm really proud of the conversations you've been having. You're asking the right questions for the right reasons. I also want to take a moment, because I enjoy conferences that are intentional. And I found this conference to be very intentional, so I think we should applaud the conference folks for doing a great job of making this with great purpose. I also want to push really hard for somebody that's a passionate man that's been in healthcare a long time. I was Texas Health Resources, Methodist Health System, and an Atrium Health. And the one thing I want to make sure that you take 100% away is a dedication to community. That your overall intent for every project, everything you touch, is for the dedication of the moment that serve those people in their moment of need. Do never forget about that. The more that you can teach the people that you hire in the purpose of why we do what we do, then be part of our mission, drives such incredible passion, you can't believe it. Most often we talk about not using the phones. Today I want you to use your phone, because I want today's conversation to be about what your needs are, where you are, and what your expectation is going forward. So everybody have their phones with them? How many have used Mentimeter? Yep. Okay, well, we're going to do that today. We're going to start right here. Just as an example, so if you'll take out your camera, it should give you a little blip to Mentimeter. And it's going to give you a little opportunity. Brother, flip it over to Mentimeter, if you will. Did it flip, brother? Not on my screen. Okay, this one did. There you go. Okay, next slide, please. Here we go. So who's in the audience? Who of your owners, architects, engineers, general contractors, consultants, others, and stakeholders? Those stakeholders are anybody that actually has the touch, importance, and relevance at the project level. Other would be our educators, like the conversation we just heard, which is phenomenal to what we're going to talk about today, because you're talking about the engagement of employees at the company level, and we don't really talk about the engagement of the employees at the project level, and we're going to talk about that. So look here, we've got 15 owners, 2 engineers. By the way, when you do it, you have to hit submit at the bottom. We've got 26 respondents, which is fantastic. This is helping me tremendously, folks, because I know I don't want to step on people's toes, but I'm a very honest, transparent man, and I need you to be honest and transparent, because we're going to use this about 6 or 7 times today to validate where you are in process. All right, so now we see who's in a room. All right, brother, go back to my PowerPoint. Everybody knows Simon Sinek Golden Circle. I love it. If you haven't seen the numbers, it's 100% of you know what you do, 85% of you know how you do it, and about 20% of you know why you do what you do. That's pretty phenomenal, but when you get down to the project level, it changes dramatically, because we're in a siloed industry that we don't teach each other sort of why. I wrote the first IPD contract in the state of Texas like 20 years ago. It was astonishing for me as an owner to actually see a group of people that I so proudly hired that didn't know what each other did for a living. It actually blew my mind. So I took it upon myself to try to fix that, based on a common basis of my journey, which has been, I've never really had a desire to make a project better. I wanted to make the industry better. I did that for 30 years of my life. I've worked on making the industry better by education, the industry, what each other does for a living. And so it's really based on this, is what is the business strategy of today's industry? And the base industry is, in our construction industry, many firms shield themselves from technology competition, and they have false sense of security because the industry suffers from declining productivity, falling profitability, and worsening component positions, because it's about cost minimization. So many projects are show me the cheapest cost and the shortest schedule, and that is the basis of measure. And it's such a short-sighted opportunity, and I'm so glad to hear in this, this conference how much is being looked at the value proposition, prefabrication, modular processes, onboarding early. I can't see everybody, but I hope GK's in here, because what GK was showing us about the culture of his project was so cool. This is back to 1989, and we're just now starting to find the reality of how to get outside of that parameter of about just cost and schedule without aligning the people at the right moment. Changing from an owner from 30 years to go to a consultant was validated based on a single book, and that book was called Strength to Strength. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It talks about when you get to the apex of your career and you actually did your 10,000 hours to master your process. You get to a moment that you start looking back over your shoulder and you see other people starting to bite at your ankles. And you have to make a decision. And that decision is, do you want to keep pushing as hard as you can, do the biggest grind to stay ahead of the curve, or do you want to take a moment and take everything that God gifted you with and mentor, coach, and educate and give back? A lot of us wait too long in our industry, and we were just talking about it in your process of employees, is we don't give back at the right time. We don't train our next people. We're so busy in life that we're just not taking the moment to really gift back everything that we've learned. The amount of knowledge in this room is phenomenal. It's a gift. How do you give that back in your normal process? The book talks about the opportunity to go find that, and it's your secondary strength. The secondary strength is mentoring and coaching and giving back. My question now to myself, after being in this is my third year having my own company, is why didn't I start giving back earlier? Why didn't I start coaching earlier? Why didn't I start mentoring earlier? And frankly, I did, but there's only so much you can do. So then I had to ask my question, something I've probably never asked myself in my career. What were the milestone moments that actually made me who I am as a man? Okay, it's an interesting question for all of us. You get to my age, you start having those reflections, okay? This young man, Barclay Burdan, took me under my wing a long time ago. He was a president of the largest hospital in downtown Fort Worth, a 1,200-bed facility. Incredible man that taught me more than anything else to ask about the needs of others before mine. For some reason, the man was more respectful for me than any man I ever met in my life, took me under his wing. He made me go through every department of the hospital operationally every other year, so I understood everything that I did in my projects, how they impacted the operations of his hospital. But not only that, he taught me how and when to ask the right questions, which is the opportunity in today's world in a siloed industry where people don't know what each other do for a living. You have to give them an environment to ask the question of why in an honest, vulnerable way so they can really understand what each other does for a living. Barclay's now the head of THR, and everything he taught me 30 years ago created the basis foundation of how I can make a difference with our PDC departments in our process. And I'll share a whole bunch more with it. Dallas-Fort Worth is really split into two halves by Highway 360. I had the 8 hospitals on the west side, HCAS and Syntax and Construction, before Balfour Beatty. Did a ton of my projects. And they taught me very early, because I'm an honorary man. I'd go out and I want to know what everybody does for a living so I can understand what kind of environment I could put together to help them be successful. I found out very early in my career how siloed our industry was and how siloed it still is unless you mandate otherwise. And I don't like the word mandate, but you can't believe how inadequate the ability for our people we hire to know what each other needs to be able to be successful in their process. So it taught me very quickly that I didn't hire firms. I stopped hiring firms way early in my career and only hired teams, which means I needed to find out very specifics of what the definition of the team is, what were their responsibility, and how could I help them be better in their task by creating an environment that allowed them to be successful. At THR, I was there for 15 years. We did some really cool things back then as far as finding out, because you mentioned HCAPs. We did a project called Next, which really validated the reason why buildings really weren't the building block of success in the culture of a hospital system. It really was the ability to understand what each of the departments did for each other, how they engaged with each other, how to make the patient experience better, how to create these kissing zones, these handoffs to make it about reality of real people, and how to keep it to be real people. The thing that I hope for everybody in here, and some of you are my age, I hope what you find is that retain all the things that we've taught through our career about serving the community. I know it's starting to feel more and more like a business. It does to me, but fight that. Fight it hard, okay? Next one is after 25 years as an owner, I decided to go to the dark side. Really close friend, Peter Beck, would come up to me at a conference like this and would ask me, Denton, when would you let us do a Beck integrated project? Beck took his father's firm, Henry C. Beck, and merged it with urban architecture to try to get 1 + 1 to equal 3. Peter was getting 1 + 1 equal 1.5. Not what he wanted. Very sharp, very intelligent man. Hired me to be his executive director of integration and collaboration to try to find out what was broken inside his own house, and it was very fun, frankly. I touched 194 projects. I found out the missing pieces were the opportunity, once again, of architecture and construction didn't know what to do to help each other. They didn't know what each other did for a living, and there wasn't one individual person that was responsible for it. So this conversation today about what is the difference between a project manager and an IPL came from this period of my life of touching 194 projects. A very simple thing I'll share with you. During this period of time is when I found the relevance of sitting projects down and doing a retrospective and find out what was going well and what wasn't going well at very specific milestone moments of a project. Translation from construction to drawings, topping out, drying in, and the most important one, 90 days before the end of the project. If your team doesn't understand how well they're doing and what they need, it's just going to be another one of those projects. They'll finish every time, but it is no fun. So we created, GK talked about this, the simplicity of doing a real project charter. I love the simplicity of GK's project charter. I take it to a more simplistic way, but more refined and more detailed. Of those 194 projects, I found that the 8 major milestone elements, topics that define risk and association on a project, such as communication, accountability, innovation, and conflict resolution. And under those, I created a database of the top 12 elements of each one of those topics to find that those are the risks that cause that opportunity to be negative. And so when we do a retrospective, I did one last week in Santa Fe, we take those 8 topics with the 12 elements underneath them, we bring the entire project team in there. What will they say when I say how things are going? They'll say it's fine. They'll say it every time, it's fine, no big deal, we got it. Peer pressure, professional courtesy keeps them from being real, honest, and vulnerable. If you don't know the study Brene Brown does on vulnerability, I highly recommend that you go look at that one. That's phenomenal that our industry needs to learn. So we take the voice away from them. We don't let them talk. We put those 8 topics on the wall, headings. We give them green, yellow, and dots. Don't talk. Put a dot at the top of the topics. If it's trust and respect, and if it's green, then move to the next topic. If it's accountability and you put a yellow or red there, then you have to put the corresponding yellow or red by every one of the elements below it that cause that opportunity. And then when we get to the end, we say, what do you have on the job site that can move that dot? And you can absolutely make Monday a better day by doing that, no matter what you do. And if you want that generic dot test, send me a note and I'll send it to you because it makes an impact on projects like you can't believe. It is human nature. If you do it at the project level, when you're doing a charter, you basically take those 8 topics and you make each of your folks use a Post-it note to give me 2 positives and 2 negatives for each of the topics. They put it on the wall. I turn it into an affinity diagram, which is always by technical and by human nature. Which one has more stickies? It's human nature. What do we measure? Technical, okay? All that led up to my next 2 stints in my professional life, which were odd from a lot of the folks in this room. It's almost like I was a hired gun. I know it's an odd term, but Methodist and Atrium Health CEO and board had me come in, hired me, not for the PDC department, but come in and change who they were as an organization and how they were going to impact the community and how they were actually going to grow and be more innovative in process. Methodist showed me how to go in and take over the department from scratch, not knowing any of the folks on that team, and knowing that they had a reputation of that gentleman that had been running that department, had been there for 24 years, hard-nosed, hard-headed, hard-ass, right? And my job was to create an integrated, collaborative process and put projects in place as soon as possible, or they're going to be assimilated by other hospital systems. So it was incredibly important. And so it's pretty interesting to take over the department from a perspective being brought in by the board, figure out who you have, what their reputation is, what are their process, what are their standards, and then go in and change that culture, which is typically a 2 or 3 year process, but you need to do it in about 6 months, okay? So I proved it at Methodist, and I proved it so well that Gene Woods from Atrium called me. I was in Dallas. He took over Carolina Health System, which turned into Atrium Health, and he wanted to know 2 things. He wanted to know if I'd come out there, evaluate everything in the Charlotte area, which is a region, it's not just a city. I want to know if I could show that PDC department could put $2 to $3 billion worth of work in place based on 2 fundamental parameters. He wanted more innovation and more risk, not less risk, he wanted more risk. We found out the hospital system that he had taken over became so risk averse that they stopped it being innovated. So every Monday for 11 months, I left Dallas and went out to Charlotte to measure everything within that region. And that region was different than it was for Dallas and me at Methodist. The people in Charlotte didn't know me from Adam. I'm just a guy that the board brought in to try to measure why maybe they weren't doing the job that he was wanting. So you're not exactly a friend to the folks, which was interesting. But if you're real and you're vulnerable and you explain your why, it's amazing how willing the industry is, because they want to do a better job. Nobody wants to fail. So I measured everything: jobs, audit descriptions, contracts. I did 62 2-hour sessions with every architect, engineer, trade partner that Atrium had contracts with, because I wanted to find out where they were, what their needs were, and what I could do better for the industry to have them a better life and actually give me a better process. And it was phenomenal. I presented to the board a single slide 11 months later. The slide says one thing. It says, was the hospital system holding back the industry, or was the industry holding back the hospital system? And clearly the hospital system was holding back the industry. I found Charlotte to be 5 to 7 years behind Dallas-Fort Worth. The next week, the head of that department resigned. Mr. Woods came and said, you want to run this department? Next thing I know is I'm in Charlotte, and I'm putting $3 billion worth of contracts in place with a collaborative integrated process. And I'm going to show you that today and what it took to do that, what type of leadership it took to do that. It about killed me, but it was one of the most enjoyable, passionate things I ever did in my life. And now I want to share what it took to do all that. If you don't believe me, if you haven't seen this, please go out and watch it. It's a David Marquet. If you'll search it, just search your Google for what does leadership look like from a nuclear subcaptain. And it goes a whole bunch to what you were just presenting on people. It's about competency and clarity. And it talks about the intent of giving the people that you hire the knowledge, the training, and the ability to make the decisions without having to go up the tree. And honestly, more often than not, you'll get a better decision. Okay? So here we go. Pull those phones out. Flip it over, my brother, to the Mentimeter. I really want to know, go to the next slide. I really want to know what your desire for, what is the desire for the project level for you? Take these and rank them. You can rank them in Mentimeter. Once you get them ranked, you can actually move them again once you have them ranked. And then once you have them in the order that you believe is appropriate for your current desires, not what your norm was or previously, what are your desires? What is the ranking? And then hit submit. All right, here we go. We get to watch it grow. We're at 3, we're at 5, 6. How beautiful is this? Think about everything we've talked about over the last couple of days about the success factors and the aspect of clarity of expectations, alignment of process, collaboration, and think about these elements that we're now looking at. Number one thing that you guys as a group want out of a project is an integrated team. How cool is that? That's not something that happened in the past. In the past, it was a very siloed process. Owners hired the architects. Architects did the drawings. Drawings got completed. The contractor was brought on late. Then the GC hired the subcontractors. Nobody had a chance to really do what I call guiding the pencils, and you never had an integrated team. Integrated team cannot be successful unless they have clarity of expectations. And there's nothing worse from an owner's perspective is to have expectations without them being met. So that's just beautiful. Instead of, you can see, I played a little here. I put on budget versus the right budget, and you guys are fantastic because you understand that the right budget is more important than a budget. And so when you talk about the difference from that, specifically you're falling into target value delivery, not target value design, which is a silo. That's a word specific thing. Then you understand the most important thing about the right budget is having the right people at the table at the right moment to define that budget. The hard part with that in the industry is the struggle on the definition for some of you that can't hire a GC until the drawings are done because they want a competitive number. And what you have to get past is the opportunity that you don't have to hire the GC right out of the chute to be able to get the right number, but you sure have to hire pre-con to get the right number. You don't have to hire the GC. Get a good pre-con, then hire the GC. Anything surprise you guys on that list? You like that list? Yeah, I do. That's fantastic. We're going to build a case here, and you guys are doing a fantastic job. Okay, brother, PowerPoint. So here's where that comes to. And here's my studies after 30 years of really being not project-focused, but industry-focused. Today I work with owners, architects, engineers, contractors, trade partners, prefabrication folks. I do workshops basically to talk about how collaborative they are. I had a really large nationwide, or actually worldwide architect call me and wanted to know if I'd come do a 2-day workshop for them because they were being told that they weren't winning some jobs because they weren't as collaborative as some of the other architects. And it blew their mind. And so at the end of the first day of the workshop, and we really talked about what is the definition of creating teams, alignment of knowledge, and really realignment of knowledge. The specific question at the end was, if an owner brought you to the table and you were brought at the same time as the contractor and the maid trades, would that be more risk or less risk? And clearly that architect says it'd be more risk. That's the lack of collaboration. Here's the issue. Collaboration, to integrate is to bring people together, to collaborate is to work with somebody else. So what does the industry really need? Collaboration, which is working well together as a group, or integration, which is the realignment of knowledge, so actually understand what each other does for a living. We need both, but the primary that we need in today's world is understanding what each other does for a living so we can actually holistically put a project together as an assembly of a project and not parts and pieces. McKinsey's come up with a topic that they're studying right now. It's called productize, and I had to look at that because that's what they're saying that our industry now needs to do is to formally deliver a product, a holistic product, not parts and pieces. And so if you have collaboration and integration, and you must have both of those, then really what's the most important factor? Alignment. So how much time do we take at the front of a project to really hire the most important people, formally sit down and align them with purpose? Every one of my project teams has had to go through a formal alignment session, and that alignment agenda is 7 pages long. And if you looked at that alignment agenda and you said, we can't get through all that, you can get through all that in 2 hours, and those people won't pick up their phone for nothing because they're so engaged because they've learned stuff about a project that they never saw before that early in the process, which is the key to the solution. The last 2 major projects, a $1 billion project in Atrium that I put together and a $500 million project in Mansfield, Texas, I put them both through an RFC process, request for collaboration. Was the aspect of putting teams together that proved the point that they could work with each other and my team all in an assembly based on 4 CBAs to show me the outcome so I could see how the team worked before I ever hired them. Love to have that conversation with anybody who wants to hear that because that was a hoot. And to tell you what the outcome was, both teams that ended up getting the project to the CBA, to the level of doing the RFC final, did white papers that showed they learned more about that project in the 2-week RFC phase than they learned typically in the 9 months of a project. By the way, you know how long it takes to build trust on a project team? 9 months. Correlated back to your numbers, okay? So here's the basis I need you to understand. I'm going to show you these two hospitals that were both built identically at the same time in my community. One was mine, one was the other hospital system. Both of them successful projects, but let's make a decision as a group what matters. A is a very linear process, traditional linear, $160 million project, 23 months, traditional delivery, CMR, design assist, design build, on time, on budget. It was successful. It met the intent. Procurement was design assist, but the trade partners weren't brought on early. I don't understand how that works, but that was how it was put together. Drawing development was ahead of constructability. VE process, yes, so they didn't get all the expectations. They missed some of the things they were promised. Schedule was driven by the critical path only based on historical norms. Limited input from your stakeholders, EVS, POM, supply chain, standard prototypes in the norms. The most common question I get from CFO is, Denton, why do we have to prototype and why do we start from zero every single time? Team learning was based on their last project. If y'all haven't seen the most current numbers, there's 57% waste in our industry right now in a typical architectural design process. 30% goes to the landfill, and we lose 1 day per week waiting on decisions. Okay? It was successful. It's a good project. B was an integrated project, not an IPD contract. Integrated, same contract, same CNR, but the alignment process of how we procured the team was more like target value delivery, more progressive design build, IPD, IPD-ish, whatever you want, CMR contract. The on time, on budget, quality, adaptability, sustainability, constructability, and focused on future proof was with the dedication of the commitment to that team for that project, which means they were being asked to use the project to benchmark to create standards for going forward as a minimum expectation. Procurement was design assist, target value design, lean. All the folks are at the table early. When we talk about target value design, if you ask somebody to explain it to you and they can't explain to you what a cluster group is, they're not doing target value design. Very simple. Formal team environment, alignment session, expectation session, formal charter, the elements to set up the dot test. Drawings, BIM, were formerly page turns. One of the things we've lost in the industry, we used to do formal page turns. Now we don't do them as regular because everything's in the model. You have to go back and start doing page turns with the model to coordinate understanding of the clarity and quality of the tool. Schedule was driven by two critical paths. Okay, I'm not going to speak to that here, but I'm going to do a whole slide on what is the definition of two critical paths, driven by a playbook of guidelines, because the first thing I did to Mr. Woods at Atrium, it says, the only way I can create innovation for you if you'll help me and support me on the basis of creating standards, and a hospital standard for a patient room is not a patient size of a room. It's the elements inside the room. It's the head wall, the foot wall, the nurse's station, the ceiling, the mechanical racks, the wall system. Look at that, $12 million under budget, 14 weeks early, 112 revenue days early, 18% construction savings, 53% of that project was built off-site, 38% savings in mechanical. Right? Only thing we did was we changed the ask, and we put this dude in place. We put an IPL, an integrated project leader, whose sole responsibility was to manage, mature the environment, to make sure that everybody had what they needed, everybody had a voice. We measured team health, we had conflict resolutions, we had all the structure in place to allow people to have success in what they were being asked to do. Big difference, huh? Here's the RFP difference. Both of them were CMR at risk. Both of them were design assist. One was design assist with an enabled based on the procurement of the trades. They were brought to the table early based on historical cost and norms. No set standards, room standards, not by the size, but the components. Come on. Target value design-ish. It's hard to do that when you don't have the trade partners on the table when you're doing pre-con to define what the target cost is, because they don't own it. Target value design, with cluster groups. And one of the coolest things we did was we actually put out to everybody the definition of the job description of the role. Okay, so there was accountability to the role. And speaking of room standards, one of the coolest things we put in at Atrium that I highly recommend that every one of you do, if you have steering team, core team, the best thing you can do is create a clinical core team that stabilizes decision making so the clinicians don't come back and make changes at the end because their peers were the ones that made the decisions that drove the standard. It so worked, so worked. Team alignment temples, the IPL was in process. Architect engineer, the traditional role was fine. Architect engineer on B had a focus on making every decision with an A3 so we could validate, educate, and use it as a benchmark, as a living document so the next project learned from it. Pre-con-ish or free-con, y'all know the term, right? Pre-con with a formal intent, which is the aspect of understanding we were going to put $3 billion worth of projects in place. I didn't just want to know that for the prefab was at a cost neutral. I wanted to know what the measures was based on the volume discounts, just like the team from J.E. Dunn, my buddies there, that project is mine as well, was mine. And they did have the ability to do group buys. We did do bathroom pods on a certain number of years, and we found real value in process. GC was procured at 50% DDs. GC was procured at the end of pre-con. Trade partners were at CDs. Trade partners and primary skin scheduled were at SD because we wanted them to take the role and responsibility of guiding the pencils. I learned a long time ago in a large project for Presbyterian Dallas, who actually brought a coach in to help us be a good team, that if an architect brought a drawing to the table that the team wasn't aware of, it was my job to tear that drawing up in front of everybody else. Okay, and I did. To the other point, that if the GC was not willing to engage in Dallas, and I did this, the subcontractors, the knowledge that we needed to make sure the information was correct, wasn't aligned because they weren't allowed to be at the table, I started hiring subcontractors before I hired GCs. Just honoring. Prefab encouraged. Prefab required at 50%. Schedule driven by those two critical paths. Linear versus continual. Okay? Here's your question. Which of these projects define success for you, and do you believe that B is achievable by the norm? Flip it over, brother. Is the project B achievable as a norm? Is an interesting question. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, wonderful. Very consistent. So absolutely, B is the expected desire of success. Yes, it is achievable, but it requires very specific clarity of expectations, alignment, integration. Would love to help you guys that are know it's not the norm. I hope it can be the norm for you because you deserve better. And I almost want to ask this question again at the end. I don't know if I'll have a time, but it'd be fun. Hit me, brother. PowerPoint. Okay, let's talk real quick. This is incredibly important where we are in the industry today. If you continue to ask for lower costs, faster schedule, higher quality, you might not be asking the right question, pure and simple. If you really want a shorter schedule, impact on revenue, strain, cost of dollars, critical paths for prefabrication, then you're going to get site, structure, closure, MEP, vertical transportation. Then you're going to say, okay, I'm going to hire some prefabs. I'm going to get bathroom pods or modular walls, but that's all I'm going to get. Because they don't drive the critical path, then you're not getting any value out of your prefabrication. It's that simple. Okay. I work right now a good bit with SurePod. I love them. They're very innovative. They asked me to do a study on can prefabrication elements be on the critical path. What is so cool about the question is you'll see, and this is out of my presentation to them, is every project that is dedicated to prefabrication should have two critical paths, an on-site critical path, an off-site critical path. Your off-site critical path, if you have a recommendation as an owner to basically say, I want 50% prefabrication, then you're automatically saying that you need mechanical racks, bathroom pods, head walls, foot walls, modular walls, OR assembles, ceiling assemblies, or you're never going to get to 50%. If you're going to do that, then you need to ask your contractor, how is he going to show you the value and the benefit of two critical paths, because they should be a day-for-day savings on your secondary critical path, and that's why we saved 112 revenue days on that project. Does that make sense? Happy to, that's a great study, but if you really want to impact your projects, and I do not push prefabrication. Okay? That's an odd statement from this man. I push prefabrication because I want earlier decisions, I want alignment of knowledge, and I want the industry to learn what each other does for a living. And prefabrication for me is just like standards. If you have a standard or a prefabrication element and it doesn't enable something else, it won't stay. Just the way it is. So the way the teams are aligned, the way we make decisions, what we do early on, automatically drives prefabrication. You're going to get it, right? But you've got to set it up. And so the whole aspect of two critical paths is a lead-lag decision. There's nothing that I struggle with more than an RFP that basically says we need prefabrication, but nobody really says what that is. That's a lag outcome. The lead outcome is Mr. Owner, you better be able to give me some standards and make commitment and make decisions, or I can't achieve what your request is. And that's where I think the industry lets the owners down, because they don't drive that piece because it's not in their norm. The shift to two critical paths is an incredible moment of excitement for our team. Prefabrication was never done in Charlotte. We did 50%, 53% on that one building, and we did the entire exterior skin masonry, prefabbed out of Atlanta, brought it up. We put mechanical racks for an 8-story building in place in 1 week. We saved 38% of labor in a market that had never done it till this man showed up in town. It can be done because the industry is willing and ready. It requires holistic decision making, which means you have to have formal decision flows and processes, a communication matrix, and an A3, A4, or a CBA tool. If you're not doing formal communication process by the way you make decisions, then you're not helping your team, you're not educating up, and I'm going to show you what that means. All right, now I want to know, what is the expectation of your team? We said what your expectation of your project was. Now I want to know about your team. Flip it, brother. Isn't it interesting just to have to ask the question? You have to think about, what do you want? As you're doing this, where I'm leading you down this journey, is I'm going to be very specifically to start asking you is, do you all have this formally defined in your RFP, or are you asking specifically and formally for the things that you want? Because if you don't, you won't get them. When you see the outcomes of these slides and you take the top 2 or 3, and I'd love for you to go back and look at your process and say, how rigid, how formal are we in requesting these things? I do struggle with the third one right now, because I hear from so many people that your systems will not allow you to procure all the people at the right time because they want the best number, which means they're getting the worst number. Yeah, I get that number 5 formula line. Keep that baby going up there, because that is huge. Look at that. The thing that our industry is known for as being siloed is the last thing on the list that you want, but the number one thing that we're known for. Isn't that amazing? That's cool. You're spot on. Now we have to make sure that you're actually achieving that based on your formal request, your scoring process, having formal scorecards. If you have a formal scorecard that you use to select your people that don't have these questions on that scorecard on how they're ranking, then you're not measuring and hiring the right people. So do you have a formal scorecard that has all that? Because here's the question. It's a chicken or the egg. And I ask this question all the time, and it just irks me like no tomorrow. When I ask this question, I get 100% answer every single time. Are the owners guiding the industry or waiting for the industry? Is the industry waiting for the owners? And the answer is yes, 100% from both of them. It's a chicken and the egg, and neither one of you are typically driving the needs of the others. And so from an owner's perspective in the room, if you're wanting everything we're seeing on these millimeter charts, then you better be way more specific in your request and your RFP process than you ever have. Because if you really think, and I'm in tune with a whole bunch of them, that the architects and the GCs are going to come tell you that this is what you need to do, they won't do it unless you ask for it. And I'm sorry that it's that way. Same thing with IPD. IPD's entire process of IPD was to take the procurement process and educate it and move it forward to get everybody at the table at the right time. And it is not the silver bullet, because we still didn't align, change the expectations, and set the tone for a different way of actually running the team together. People still didn't talk to each other. That first IPD project I did for THR Alliance for THR, I was amazed when I had everybody that signed that contract with fee at risk had to go to every design meeting. They'd come back from those meetings, they'd spend 50% of their time talking about what each other did for a living. They only had 50% of their time left to do their job, and they found a better way to do it. Forced behavior. IPD will not fix it by themselves. That's why I've never created another IPD contract. I focused on the environment, then I got all the outcomes I wanted out of IPD because of this. Most of you have seen this. It's called the Tuckerman model. That's how all projects go. They start with forming, storming, norming, performing. When you ask why we have 57% waste in our process, because it takes us so long to put the team together to build trust, because we don't align them functionally, we don't onboard them properly. And then we finally get them working high at the very top. It's called eustress. That goes from functional to dysfunctional. The owner starts making changes. We don't get a permit. We have weather delays. We start getting dysfunctional. We go to deformal and dismantlement, and the people can't wait for the project to be over. We've all had one. But look at that real cool little moment called transformation. Transformation is the coolest moment if you have alignment of project charter, expectations, clarity of roles and responsibilities, and a dot test. You can stop a team that's starting to conform, reset them without having to get their voice, and all of a sudden you get them functional again because you set the front end up right. It is so hugely important. So if it's important, then what do you want out of your project managers? What's a good project manager for today in your world of your collaborative, integrated, aligned teams? Flipper, brother. Look at that, number one, skilled facilitator. Isn't that fantastic? Proactive, ask the right questions. Not only just meet the expectations, understand the expectations. See the number one thing that probably was in the past that we want that person to be responsible. It's bouncing around. And I specifically put accountable to scope and budget and accountable to team to see where you guys would rank that. Let's get a few more. We're at 15, 16. So the generic question here, as we're leading down this road, spending some quick minutes, is that number 5 down there, which is accountable to the team, the entire project team, entire product environment. How many project managers do you have that are responsible for the environment? That is their primary responsibility. You guys are, that skilled facilitators, huge, proactives, huge, ask the right questions to the project team, not just their specific skilled set of work, but what are the needs of the team, okay? Fantastic. All right, brother, PowerPoint real quick. All right, so when I spoke earlier about when I went and touched 194 project teams, I don't expect you to read this, but this was the structure of collaboration that I built when I was at Beck. This collaboration is a wonderful thing, but it has to have a structure to it. When you look at the milestone moments of this chart where you actually overlap architectural, construction, pre-con, scheduling, look at all the elements that have to happen on the front end. Those are alignment to mission and vision. That is clarity of scope, cost, and budget and schedule. That is your ability for the team to own the cost so they can do target value design. That's your alignment session and expectation session, all at the front end. All that has to happen to create this environment necessary to create an integrated process. Only 4 of them have to happen. And those 4 come out of this Dodge analytic think tank that basically said, if you focus on team chemistry, the integration procurement at the right time, the alignment, the formal alignment of those people, vision, mission, tools, process, technology, and innovation, and you get timely decisions based on using formal tools for make decisions, it's not best versus worst project, it's best versus typical. Look at the difference on the scores. If you'll put the process in place to create the structure, because if you think just collaboration will get you there, it won't. So how many people think, here's your next one, in your current RFPs that you have clarity of the request in your RFP or the RFPs that you've seen for those fundamental 4 rocks? Meter, brother. I hope you leave, and all my information is going to be at the end, where if you want to see the outcome of these, I'm more than happy to send them to you, because this right here is a killer outcome of if there's 11 folks in here, 12 folks in here that don't have the formal definition of the 4 functional rocks that you must have to be able to create certainty in your project, then you need to go back next week and update your RFP. Just saying. Just being very transparent and very open. Very cool. Y'all believe that, right? It's your information. Okay? PowerPoint, please. All right. Then who owns it? Who owns it? Does your owner PM, your owner rep, your architecture, GC, other? Who owns the formal environment that it takes for your teams to be successful? Meter? So when you look at this, it's 99% the owner owns the environment. But when you talk about today's environment and what it takes to actually focus on culture, onboarding, alignment, expectations, team health, I bet hardly any of you have a dedicated person for that task. And if the industry and every project is expecting you to own that task, and nobody really owns it, and you say, well, the entire team owns it, which means nobody owns it, right? Then we found the real embodiment of the opportunity for success. So, when will we see the value for leadership responsible for integration, alignment, and environment for the entire team? It is your choice. It's because it's driven by your RFP. If you don't have that, that project that I showed you that was so successful, I did not have an internal PM that could run that project based on Denton Wilson's expectations. I went out and we've got one exterior project manager that I interviewed and found that got it and understood it, and I put 2 project managers on that one project so that one project manager external could own the environment. The internal project manager mind could learn what it took to do that, and I got the best of both worlds. I taught my internal staff how to do it right. I got the external person to focus on it, and it was an absolute win. You have to own that. From an owner's perspective, you get what you ask for, and I am so sorry to say this, but the industry will not get it unless you ask for it. And if that RFP question I asked you basically says that most of you say the owner's responsibility and you don't have it, then you're not going to get it. Here's the why. It's once again about authority versus responsibility. Authority is granting power. Responsibility is fulfilling the obligation. Owners, while the authority does not automatically come with every task, responsibility is at every opportunity. You might not have the authority, but everybody around the table has the responsibility to everybody else. And I suspect in GK's project at Texas Children's, That was absolutely the real key to the understanding of the success of that project. They created a culture of responsibility to each other. That's the real win. The problem is it will not happen naturally. Our industry's not taught that. They're not taught that in school. And a lot of projects go south and people are scared to actually take a risk and be that. So let's talk about real quick, what does that look like? If that owner is responsible for that environment, and the right-hand side of this, and it's hard to read, but it's something I'll share with you very openly. The right-hand side in Denton's world, everybody knows that's Denton slide 61. That's the best visual target value design slide that I've been able to use for C-suites to get them to understand what the flow for a real project is based on the client's business case, the sufficient price, the onboarding and procurement of people, the ability to make right team decisions, to set a preliminary cost, to define an expected cost, to use target value design to drive costs down. Okay? The opportunity that we're hearing today, and I heard a whole bunch about it in this conference, is now there's so much that has to happen before the project starts. If you're really going to do standards, you're really going to do onboarding, and you as an owner don't take the responsibility to go educate the folks that you're going to hire before you hire them, you're missing a hell of an opportunity. Our industry is only one of the very few when research that we don't have R&D. We do an R&D as we fly. Let's do it on the beginning. This is a real success case. This is a hospital system that I worked with last year. This is their outcome of this whole study of the Dentonism. It shows how they went from the how, the why, the what. They now have an expectation of 75% of all their elements in their hospitals are going to be standardized as a living document that will grow after each project, but it sets the tone, a minimum going forward, and you talking about a gift to the team is give them standards. Continual flow, continual learning, continual acknowledgement, continual structure. So let's talk about that project manager. Here's Wikipedia's definition of a project manager that we typically see. It is the responsible for planning, procurement, education of a project, execution of a project. Where in there does it say anything about that person's responsibility, the environment necessary for the people to be successful? It's not existent. So if we go with an integrated project leader, and we have to see what that is, I built a job description at Beck. I put an IPL filter in place. It still didn't get there. Then I wound up certifying and doing a certification IPO class, and we certified 55 people at Beck, and it changed the outcome and the bottom line like you couldn't believe. Okay? Has to be a great facilitator, orchestrator of the team, responsible for the integration, procurement of the team, understand integrated standards, overall delivery of projects, and a skilled technician, but a better leader, which is right in line with what your expectations were when I asked you what do you want out of a project manager. The position is phenomenal. So what is the responsibility of the position? The environment. Project alignment, project integration, project collaboration, team health, onboarding, measures of accountability, flow decision, and conflict resolution with clarity of roles and responsibilities. Who in your normal process has got the responsibility for those elements? And if you don't have somebody, but you want a real integrated process, then you need to find somebody that has responsibility to champion it, or you won't get it. You can't read this, and I apologize for that, but I need you to see it. I was working on a really cool greenfield hospital for Atrium. The CNO loved this mindset, loved this process. And when we got to this process of going up and looking at the structure outside, she says, Denton, I love your process. I can't wait for the building to get dried in because I can't wait to start moving walls around. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And so I went back and created a spreadsheet that basically took every part and piece of the hospital, specifically down to a patient room, head wall, foot wall, nurse pod. Is it on the critical path? Who are the decision makers? Who are the stakeholders internal? EVS, pharmacy. What divisions of work did it impact? Mechanical, electrical, drywall. And when I went back and showed her that every time she made a decision, it moved all these elements, she broke down and cried on me because nobody ever explained it to her in that way. This one came from the hospital system I just showed you, who actually included overall critical path, revenue stream impact, the impact for staff retention, satisfaction, patient satisfaction, and operational efficiency. Now you've got a spreadsheet that actually shows you the enablement of the process. Here's where we're struggling with standard prefabrication. A lot of people see this one directional. We find elements, we put it in the standard critical path. We don't get a lot of value on it. It's at a break even on zero on cost and schedule. It doesn't bring as much value as it should because we're very linear in the flow. What you want is it to be a continual learning and engagement of education of the team, guiding the pencils, making it better in process, changing the flow and doing 2 critical paths. Now you get the value for it. Really didn't get the strength of the IPL until I created this document that basically says, here are the 4 fundamentals. You can have an IPL coach, somebody that actually goes across multiple projects, or a captain that can have a secondary role and that role on a project. But they have to be scored within leadership, authority, respect, team health. Under leadership, if they had the willingness and the ability to make timely decisions, I put an I in the box. If it says, could they properly delegate based on their maturity level where they are as a leader, and they couldn't, I put an O in the box, which means the operational leader responsible for that individual had to teach that person that role during this project. And we started growing people. They're not unicorns. They really love the role like you can't believe. They're proud of their journey. They're proud of how much they're learning, and they're proud of the impact they make on other people. I will not go into depth on this. But I did, just like you said, I created the 9 core competencies of an IPL so they know what they're going to be measured for, and it's not a generic job description. And I'm happy to share all those with you. I don't have time today. Then, if you have all that, then as an owner, you have this incredible gift to give to everybody you hire, which is a playbook. And not just a traditional playbook of standard operating procedures. A playbook that goes through and talks about 5 chapters, 4 or 5. Chapter 1, being our why. Why are we doing what we do? What are we going to do with it? What drives us? That approach document, when I went to Charlotte, I wrote a 4-page approach document that says, this is how we're going to put projects together. This is our mission statement. This is how we're going to procure projects. This is how we're going to use innovations. This is how you're going to have a voice. This is how we're going to measure the team. And I put that on the back of every single RFP, and all of a sudden I got much, much, much better engagement from the people we're trying to hire because they knew what the expectation was. Process tools, templates, strategy information, design assist. What does it mean? Is it design assist or design told? Integrated mindsets. And then what is the IPL's role? Give that to everybody you work with. Give them some examples. Give them all these tools. If you don't have communication matrix, decision matrix, conflict resolution matrix, prefab matrix, and innovation matrix on every one of your projects, then you're leaving a lot to chance. Build them. Make them on every one of your projects. All the lean tools we can have, but you have to have those matrices. How do you make decisions? What decisions can they make? What level do they go to? Formally have that as an alignment process. If you're not giving teams level this information, then you're taking a lot for chance. Whew, that's a lot in a hurry. I know we're right on time, so that's my information. I love passionately what we're doing. I really do have all these core competencies, all these tools. I'm in that moment of just giving away knowledge because I still love the industry like no tomorrow. You guys are asking the right questions. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you need me, holler at me.